Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We warmly welcome the family of Private Harold William Byrne George, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following school: St Andrew's Catholic College, Red Lynch, Queensland. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Harold William Byrne George. Harold George was born in 1894 in Perth, the son of William and Mary Ann George. His father was a well-known West Australian businessman and politician. George grew up in Claremont and attended nearby Scotch College, where he was regarded as a young man of great ability. After completing school and passing his exams with high marks, he began a career as a clerk with McLean Brothers and Rigg, ironmonger and hardware store. He also served for 2 years in the 86th Infantry Regiment, West Australian Rifles. Following the outbreak of the First World War, George enlisted for service in the Australian Imperial Force at Black Boy Hill Camp on the 19th of November 1914. As he was still 6 months short of his 21st birthday, he enlisted with his father's written consent. George joined the newly raised 16th Battalion, 3/4 of which came from Western Australia. For his training, he was sent to the battalion's machine gun section. Among his friends in the battalion were Private Percy Black, who would go on to gain a reputation as one of the AIF's finest and bravest soldiers before being killed at Bullecourt in May 1917. And Private Harry Murray, who was awarded the Victoria Cross in France in 1916 and became the most decorated member of the AIF. In November, the companies of the 16th Battalion travelled to Melbourne, where they formed as a battalion for the first time, along with the rest of the 4th Infantry Brigade, commanded by Colonel John Monash. On the 22nd of December, the 16th Battalion embarked aboard the transport ship Ceramic, bound for Egypt. It was to be a relatively short stay for the battalion, as in March, Australian units began shipping to the island of Lemnos in preparation for the Gallipoli campaign. The 16th Battalion arrived at Lemnos on the 15th of April. The men trained hard, practising disembarking from ships and rowing ashore, as well as some field manoeuvres. The Australian troops began landing at what became known as Anzac Cove around 4:30 a.m. on the 25th of April. Fighting throughout the day was fierce. At around 5:30 p.m, 2 companies of the 16th Battalion, along with the machine gun section, came ashore. The battalion's commander, Lieutenant Colonel Harold Pope, was ordered to take all available troops to hold a vital part of the line. He led his men, along with 2 platoons from the 15th Battalion and a half company of New Zealanders, to a spur between Courtney's Post and Russell's Top. By the time the men were in their positions, night had fallen. The feature would become known as Pope's Hill. Fighting remained intense throughout the night and the following days as the Anzac troops fought to consolidate their precarious toehold. On the 27th of April, Ottoman artillery fire was heavy and numerous counterattacks were launched, attempting to drive the Australians and New Zealanders into the sea. During the day's fighting, George was shot and killed by a sniper. He was 20 years old. His remains were initially interred in a solitary grave about halfway up Pope's Hill. After the war, his remains were reinterred in Pope's Hill Cemetery. However, torrential rains and flooding forced the relocation of the graves and the closure of this cemetery in 1923. George's remains were interred in the nearby Quinns Post Cemetery. To his headstone was added the epitaph, "Just a boy, cut off in his flower." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Harold William Byrne George, who gave his life for us, for our freedom, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.